Have you ever found yourself eager to create something but feel stuck in a creative rut? Yeah, me too. It's so easy to put pressure on yourself to try and perform, to try and produce something that might gain acceptance, become popular, or maybe even yield a specific amount of views. I guess thinking like that can often push you further from your own true creative nature. When I begin to question what might make a good video, what might make a great piece of work, it's far too easy to start looking to others to see what's already been done and to follow suit, to find out what other people have already made successful, instead of just looking within ourselves to find our own creative and unique ideas. How are you supposed to find your own flair, your own style, if we constantly look to others as the source of inspiration for our own work? So my advice to you, to anyone listening, watching, or even myself for that matter, is to just concentrate on making something a little bit better than the last piece of work you produced. Forget about how it might perform or how well it's received. Create something purely through the love of creation, something that you can be proud of, something that you can look back on and think, yes, I put in the work, I put in the effort, and that is my reward. If you enjoyed that first intro sequence, then consider hanging around, because that is exactly what we're going to be taking a look at today. I wanted to share some of the techniques that I've picked up since getting my first camera and dipping my feet, my toes, dabbling with videography, photography, and filmmaking. So if that's something you're interested in, sit back and enjoy the rest of this video. I understand that that's basically two tips rolled into one, but I think the two kind of go hand in hand. Particularly if you're shooting in an outdoor environment, the timing of your shoot is going to heavily influence the lighting situation that you have on your hands. Choosing the correct time of day to shoot your video is actually impeccable for ensuring that you get the footage that you want. Shooting at sunrise or sunset is going to give you far more aesthetically pleasing results rather than shooting in broad daylight with all that harsh light when the sun is highest in the sky. If you want to shoot at those times, if it's a cloudy, overcast day, the clouds can actually act as a softbox and really diffuse that harsh light. So you don't have to restrict yourself to just sunrise and sunset. So in this first example clip, as you can see, we're facing directly into the sun. We don't have an ND filter applied. We're losing all the detail in the highlights, and the image just looks a little bit washed out, not very pleasing at all. So as you can probably tell, this second shot has been slightly improved, but I feel as though there's still some room for improvement. All we did here was simply rotate the camera 180 degrees, and now we're shooting away from the sun. Here in this third shot, we've decided to use the ND filter, and this just shows what a dramatic difference that can make to your footage. These are the kind of results you can achieve when you're aware of your surroundings and you use them to your advantage. So I'm sure you've been in the situation before when you've been out shooting a sunset, you're running out of light and you're starting to feel the pressure to get those final shots. And I think knowing your gear and knowing what your gear is capable of can really benefit you. But not only that, being able to make creative choices based on your environment. Sometimes you're faced with a decision and you might have to choose between exposing for the sky or exposing for the subject. And this was a perfect example of that. If I had chosen to expose for the subject, I would have had to use a higher ISO, which would have compromised image quality and probably lost a lot of detail in the highlights. And since a lot of the highlights were in the sky, this wasn't an option for me because it would have blown out that nice background and I would have lost all the detail in that amazing sunset. Here I've exposed for the subject, but I'm losing a lot of detail in the sky, and in this second clip I've exposed for the sky, but I do lose some detail in the subject. Because I made the decision to expose for the sky, I wasn't able to capture the emotion on my face as I witnessed the sun go down, which was unfortunate, but that was a sacrifice I was willing to make in this circumstance. Sometimes you have to weigh up your options and see which one fits your story best. So the next important point of interest is framing. Be deliberate and take the time to choose exactly what it is you want to include within your frame. As you can see in some of these example clips, I'm cutting off parts of the subject, and not only does this look unpleasant, it can be very off-putting to watch. Paying attention to what's actually in your frame makes all the difference to your final production. In these shots, my camera gear is scattered around in the background, and that will just kill any sort of submersive vibes you've got going on with your audience. Take a look at the background in these first few clips. Very dull, boring and uninteresting, but by simply taking a look around and observing the surroundings and stepping off to one side, we've completely transformed the shot. Now we're facing something far more scenic. We've got the motion of the river on the left hand side. Just above that we've got the sky, which has given the opportunity for those birds to be flying through the frame, and also we've got the vibrant colours on the right hand side, which has made the shot far more interesting. Now we add the subject and we've transformed the frame entirely. So I think a great tip here would be to simply observe your environment. Take a look around, hold your camera up and look through the viewfinder until you find a scene that you find interesting, and then you can begin to think about how to frame a subject within that scene. Camera motion and technique. This obviously varies depending on the project, but in this particular circumstance, I was the subject and I was also the one framing. So if you find yourself in this situation, be sure to take a variety of shots. Wide shots, punched in shots, macro shots, tripod shots, handheld shots. Just do what you can to keep the pace and make it as interesting as possible. Even consider using keyframes in post to fake that camera motion, and that can really drive your story and keep the momentum flowing. Personally, I like to experiment with all sorts of different camera motion, but that's a creative choice. Maybe you want to have every single shot locked off on a tripod. Maybe you want to have every shot punched in and close, creating that sense of curiosity, and then, oh my god, all is revealed when you finally give the audience that wide establishing shot. But just be intentional with your camera motion. What you might want to avoid is whipping around trying to chase things around the scene. That's something I did relentlessly when I first got my camera. I'd be like, oh my god, look at those birds, and whoa, look at that car that just went past. Now I try and allow myself to hold that motion, and if there's birds going past, for example, I just allow them to pass through the frame, and it gives a far superior effect in my experience. Another good tip here is to show things from your perspective. You'll notice I included a clip of my feet walking along the bridge, and I shot that from a first person view. Or when I started looking up at all that metal framework, I took another shot of exactly what it is I was looking at. There was also a clip of me looking across at the bridge. Now, rather than just focusing on the back of my head, I manually focused on the bridge, and that way the audience sees what I'm seeing, and I think that can really drive your story and help immerse the viewer into your storyline even further. Okay folks, I'm going to wrap it up there. Sorry, I'm heavily distracted by this background. Listen to this. It's winter outside, and that is a very satisfying noise.